Okay, this is my second recording because when I recorded and then the recording didn't work. Okay, here you go. I'm going to read the book The Prince and the Pauper, which was written by Mark Twain, and then I'm going to read two chapters: The Birth of the Prince and the Pauper, Tom's Early Life. The story is familiar. Alright, the Great Seal Owl set down a tale as it was told to me by one who had it of his father, which letters had it of his father, and his lost having like a manner had of his father, and so on, back and still back and 300 years and more. The father's transmitting to sons, and so is preserving it. It may be a history, it may be only a legend, a tradition. It may have happened, it may not have happened, but it could have happened. It may be that the wise and the learned and believed it in the old days. It may be that only learned and simply loved it and credited it. 1. The birth of the Prince and the Pauper. In an ancient city of London, on a certain autumn days in the second quarter of the 16th century, a boy was born to a poor family of the name of Canty, who did not want him. On the same day, another English child was born to a rich family of the name of Tudor, who did want him. All England wanted him too. England had so longed for him and hoped for him and prayed God for him. And now that he was really come, and the people went years mad for joy, and mere acquaintances hugged and kissed each other and cried. So everybody took holidays, and high and low, and rich and poor, feasted, danced, and sang, and got the bird moved, and they kept these up for days and nights together. So by day, London was a sight to see, and with gay banners waving from every balcony and the housetop, and the splendid peasants marching along. By night, it was again a sight to see, with its great bonfires at every corner, and its troops of lovers making merry on them. When there was no talking all over England but on the new baby, Edward Tudor's Prince of the West, who lay wrapped in silks and satins, unconscious of all this first, and not knowing that great lords and ladies were tending him and watching over him, and not caring to either. There was no talk about the other babies. Tom Canty left his poor legs and sitting on the families of paupers, whom he had just come to trouble with his presence. Tom's early life. Let us skip a number of years. London was 1500 years old, and was a great town for the day. It had 100,000 inhabitants. Don't think about double as many. The streets were very narrow and crooked and dirty, especially in the park. And when Tom Canty lived, where Tom Canty lived, which was not far from the London Bridge, houses were of wood, with the second stories protecting all the first, and the third sticking the elbows out beyond the second. The higher the house grew, the broader they grew, and they were skeletons of the strongest cross beams with solid materials between, coated with plaster. The beams were painted red and blue-black according to the owner's taste, and this gave the house the very futuristic look. The windows were small, glazed with little diamond-shaped panes, and they opened outwards hinges like doors. The house which Tom's father lived in was a four little pocket called Upper Court. Out of the pudding lane, it was small, decayed, and leaky. But it was the fact full of the restless poor families. Can't strive occupied rooms on the third floor. The mother and father had a sort of the better side set in the corners. The Tom's his grandmother's and his two sisters and nuns were not strict. They and all the floors to themselves and might sleep where they chose. There were the remains of a blanket or two or some bundles of ancient dirt stored, but these could not, or at least be called beds, for they were not organized. They were kicked into general piles in the morning and selections made from the mass at night for service. Ben and Nuns were 15-year-old twins. They were good-hearted girls, and green-clothed, relaxed, and profoundly ignorant. Their mother was like them, but the father and the grandmother were a couple of friends, and they got drunk, and whenever they could, and then they fought each other's or anybody else who came in the way. They cursed and swore, raced, drunk or sober, and John Canty's was a thief, and his mother was a beggar, and they made beggars of children, but failed to make thieves of them. Among another, the dreadful rival that inhabited the house was a good old priest whom the king had turned out of the house and soon with the pension of the few farthings, and they used to get children aside, teach them wide ways to which the Papa Andrew was taught them a little Latin and how to read, write, and would have done the same with the girls, but they were afraid of the jeers of their friends, who could not have endured such a cruel accomplishment in them. On awful call, which is such another hive as a scant house, drunkenness, riot, brawlings, the order there. Every night and years the old night-long broken hairs was as common as a stone girl, in that place. The little Tom was not unhappy sticky and had hard times of it, but did not know it. It was the sort of times that all awful court and the boys had. The first he supposed was the correct and then comfortable things, and when he came home empty-handed and not. He knew his father would curse him and thrashing him first, and then when he was down, the awful grandmothers to do it all over again and improve on it. That away in the night, his starving mother stood slipped to him and settled it with his hands. Miserable scraps of crust she had been able to save for him by going hungry herself. Notwithstanding, she was often caught in the sort of treason and undistributions for it by her husband. No Tom's life went on enough to, especially in summer. He even begged just enough to save himself. The laws against the mendicantry were stringent and the penalties heavy, so he put in a good deal of his time to listening to a good father Andrew's charming old tales, legends about giants and fairies, dwarfs and genies, and the enchanted castle and gorgeous kings and princes. His headers grew full of these wonderful things. Many nights as he lay in the dark and on his scant and offensive throats, tired, hungry, and smarting from the thrashing, he unleashed his imaginations and soon forgot his ashes and pains in delicious picturing to himself of the charmed life that fed his prince in a regal palace. When desires came in time to haunt him day and night, it was to see a Leo's prince with his own eyes. He spoke of it once to some of his offers court and comrades, but they jeered him and scoffed him so unmercifully that it was great to keep his dreams to himself at that. He often read the first old books and got him to explain and enlarge upon them his dreaming, and readings worked on certain changes in him. So by and by, he dreamed people was so fine that he grew to lament his shabby clothing and his work, and wishes to be clean and better clad. He went on to blame the mud just the same and enjoy it too, but instead of splashing around in the street things, soreness for the fun of it, he began to find added value in it because of the washing and the cringing it afforded. Tom could always find something going around his Mayford and Cheapside at his fairs, and now and then he and the rest of London chanced to see military played when some famous unfortunate was carried prisoner to the Tower by an boat, and on summer's days and he sorted to full and Askew and then Suleiman Burn at the stake in Smithfield, her and officials to preach a sermon to them which they did not interest him. His son's life was buried and present enough on the whole, By and by, Tom's readings and dreaming about the princely life wrote such a strong effect upon him that he began to act the prince unconsciously. His speech and the manners became curious to the ceremonies and courtly, to the vast admiration and enjoyment of his intimated Tom's influence, and among these young people began to grow now, and day by day, and times they came to be looked and up and by them with a sort of the wondering, oh, as a superior beings, they seemed to know so much, and they could do, say, such marvelous things, and withal. He was so deep and wise, Tom's market and Tom's performance were forced to by the boys, and to there's the others, and these also presenters began to discuss Tom Canty, and to regard him as a most gifted, extraordinary creature, who groans the people brought their perplexity to Tom's for solution, and was often astonished at the wit and wisdom of his decision. In fact, he becomes a hero to all who knew him except his own family. These only saw nothing in him. Privately, afterwards, Tom's organized a loyal court. He was the prince. His special comrades was guard, chamberlains, and equerries, and royal ladies in waiting. The royal families, they the mocked prince and was received in elaborate ceremonies about by Tom from his romantic greetings. Daily, the great appearance of mimicking them was discussed in all crimes. Daily is mimicked highness. He should decrease in his imaginary armies near the back or Basset or it is. After which he would go forward in his legs and beg on few partings, eat it for court, taking his customary cup and abuse, and then stretch himself upon his handful of full whole of sword, and legions the empty grandeurs in his dreams, until his desire to look just once upon a little prince and fresh the glue upon him, and day by day, and week by week, and until at last he observed all how the desires became the one passion of his life. One January day, on his usual begging tours, he trampled despondently up and down the regions round about the mincing lane as little east trip, and hour after hour, barefoot and cold, looking like crook and sharp and windows, and looking for dreadful for pies and other deadly inventions displayed as three dearest for to him. These were the daintiest fit for the angels, that is, judging by the smiles, their words, for it had never been his good luck to own and eat one. There was a cold breeze of rain, and atmosphere was murky. It was a melancholy day, and night times reached his homes so wet and tired and hungry, and that it was not possible for his father and grandmother to observe his poor own conditions, not being moved at their affection, who wherefore they gave him a brisk cuffings at once and sent him to bed. For long times his pains, hungers, swearings, and fighting, going in the buildings, kept him awake, and but at last his thoughts drifted away to far romantic lands, and he fell asleep in the company of George, and the greatest of concerns who live in vast place, and have the servants of Salaams. The people then were supplying to execute their orders, and thence, as usual, he dreamed that he was a princeling son himself. All night long, the glories of his glorious estate shone upon him. He moved among great lords and ladies, and a blaze of lights, breathing perfumes, drinking delicious music, and answering the labyrinth of scenes, returning from as it parties to make the way for him. The hero smiles, and there are not of his princess head, and when he awoke in the mornings and looked upon the residence and about him, his dream had as usual affected and had intensified suddenness of his surroundings thousandfold. Thence came bitterness and heartbreak and tears. I'll add 2 chapters, and here you go. Let me check. This works, and then I did it.